So, talking about decision intelligence, speed, and best practice, I could not think of a better example than Dell. And I want to discuss this further. I would like to welcome my first guest today, Sasha Koff. All right, Sasha, how are you?
I'm great.
Good to see you.
Good to be
Welcome back.
Yeah.
You and I were sitting here on the same chairs about
A year ago.
about a year ago, almost to the day.
Literally.
So the reason why I'm so excited to have you back is with all the great work that Dell has done and you've done with the team at Dell. So where are you in the journey 12 months later? Because it's great to talk about when you first joined me on that stage. That was about 4 or 5 months after the start of the project. You went
Yeah.
live with the first skill.
Yeah.
You've made amazing progress. Love to hear more about it.
Yeah. So I guess just to rewind for a second, right? If I think about the journey that Dell was on, we had set this ambitious journey of truly being the industry's leading autonomous supply chain. And those first skills that we launched with you all was really about taking and proving a proof of concept that this idea of truly allowing a computer to make critical decisions on behalf of the business that were in control around variables that we had set and allowing it to actually then process it back to transactional applications would push through and would work. So those first 3 skills that we launched that I talked about last year that we felt were actually proving successful were around a finished goods product here in the United States. We were looking at excess inventory. We were looking at shortages of inventory and having the solution help us identify and give suggestions around that. And we were looking at geo split in terms of how we were actually making shipments around the product. So that's where we were. We were about 2.5, 3 months into the launch of that skill. We were really very bullish about what we were seeing out of that skill. And we left that conversation last year and said, okay, it's time for us to go into it in a really big way. We took those 3 skills, we expanded it globally. We expanded it across other product categories. We've included auto write-back, so no longer are we actually having human beings in the solution as the tool is actually giving recommendations, but we actually have the tool actually launching that now back into our transactional applications. And we've started to really expand the footprint of those solutions and skill sets as well, right? So we've added in a demand sensing skill, as well as one that's taking a look at aging inventory.
Yep.
And the piece that I'm the most excited about now is also the connection in terms of helping to work more seamlessly with our commercial organization in terms of demand shaping as well. And I think this is unique, right? We've always said in the supply chain world that we should be looked as a significant partner to our commercial organization and not a servant to the commercial organization. And these skills are now allowing us to really live in that world of commercial and supply chain being much, much closer together.
So bring you back a little bit. When I said in my intro that it takes about 4 months to deploy, on average, Dell was exactly that. I think you started mid-April.
Yep.
And you were live with the
August.
skill in July and August, and then the write back was completed like 30 days later.
Yeah.
And at that point, you said, Fred, we're going to start breaking Aera, and we're going to go big. So.
Yeah.
So that was exciting. You didn't break Aera, by the way.
We're still trying.
You're still trying. You're working hard at it. We're just one minute ahead of you every time. So can you give us some examples of some of the results that you're getting with those skills now?
Yeah, so for the skills that we now have live, close to 92% of the recommendations that are coming out of the application are being accepted. And that represents roughly 37,000 what we call truly significant decisions that theoretically would have been in the hands of human capital having to do that. And quite frankly, I'm not sure they would have gotten through all 37,000, but that's what it represents today. In the context of shipments, right, if we think about just automation of it, it's roughly 130,000 shipments that have been impacted, again, through automation and acceptance of those decisions. So it's not minute by any stretch of the imagination. And I think one of the things that we are really looking forward to with some of these newer skills is historically, and I'm sure many of the folks in the audience and whether here in person or online, we've had to make a decision of what is the scope of the data sets that are available to us that we can focus our energy on. And we've had to kind of forget about the long tails of decisions. And so if I think about our aging inventory as an example, because we're now able to attack this truly with machine learning and automation, right, no longer do I have to worry about the tail. I actually can take into account all of the available information and really highlight to a user community around those decisions. No longer is it the Pareto chart of the top 20%. It truly is 100% of what we're looking at. And I think that's really an incredible journey when we think about truly the efficiency of the supply chain organization.
So one question that I have and people have is how did you move so fast, so deliberately? You're moving faster than most companies. So is it down to the Dell culture? Is it down to things that you've done specifically with that project in your experience?
Yeah. So look, I think some of it is definitely cultural related, right? An environment that really prides itself, quite frankly, on supply chain being a competitive advantage.
Yeah.
Learn fast, fail fast, pivot if it's not working, and if it is working, why can't we get it everywhere as fast as possible? So that is absolutely part of the culture. I think the other piece is, and I think we talked about this last year as well, is that part of the reason we're also able to move as quickly as we are going is the fact that there has always been a real belief that data is the gasoline that was going to power this engine, if you will, and really taking a very focused approach in terms of how we thought about data as a product. So if we think about these skills that we have live right now, to give the audience a sense, right, we've got 12 significant applications that we are pulling data from, represents about 200 plus data models that we're using, certainly with the help of your graph database that's helping to enable this capability. But I think it's this combination of culture and data together that really is helping to accelerate. I think the other piece is there really is real clarity around how we think about the portfolio. What are the key questions that we want to have answered? And always starting from this concept of what has to be true to allow the computer to operate on its own. Mm-hmm. And not settling with 20%, 30%. No, like how do we get it to 100%, get the human out of the loop and have full trust that the system is able to make the right decision and write that decision back so we can really take that human capital and focus on the next problem that's in the portfolio.
And I don't have the exact number from last year, but I think you were not at 92%.
No. I think we were like in the 70s, maybe at 80.
It was quite lower than that,
Yeah.
and you were just at the beginning. So you're now talking about 90%. You're talking about getting full 100% on some skills wherever
Yeah.
it makes sense. So adoption. Talk about how you're driving that adoption. So one thing to take care of the data and the intelligence, but the engagement. How do you manage that, the work with the users?
Yeah, so when I was sitting on this stage last year, I think we had roughly 25 or so Dell associates. We had a pretty significant integration partner, obviously, with you all as well. That community has now shifted, right? So we have over 250 internal users, about 160 or so folks that are now certified development folks in the application as well. And I think part of the adoption really has been quite candidly part of the interface, right? That the interface has made it easy for this kind of human consumption interaction, and that it is in truly the context of how people go about doing their tasks of work, as opposed to being, and no offense to our ERP partners, right, but screen click, find a row, go to another screen, maybe click into another thing, right? So it's much more intuitive, which makes it easier for the associates to actually get the work done if in fact they're being asked to make a decision and we haven't actually moved to a full automation yet.
I think you're talking about two very distinct populations, the population of those who are building and maintaining the skills, and that's, you guys really went into owning that responsibility in a big way and have a very significant, team of Aera developers, which is super cool. And then, of course, the end users who are receiving the recommendations and taking action. So I know we're going fast today, but what did you learn in the last 12 months? What can you share with the audience online and here in the room?
Yeah, it's interesting. I went back and I looked at my notes from last year, and quite candidly, it's still the same.
Yeah.
Right? And I think it just affirmed some of the early learnings that we had early on, which is number one, be really clear about what is the problem set that you're going after. Don't fall in love with the solution, fall in love with the problem and what you're solving. I think the second is get really uncomfortable, comfortable with the uncomfortable, right? That was the second piece. The third, and I think we continue to see this, which is the value of the investment around data, which is never a sexy thing, and nobody ever really wants to talk about the investment, but how critically important it is to stay ahead of that component. And then I think the last two that I'll talk about really does deal with culture, right? How do you enable teams to feel empowered about learning and making these iterations and being okay if something's not working to step back and say, okay, well, why? And then to rapidly iterate to the next piece, and quite frankly, rewarding the iteration as opposed to just getting it right. Is one of them. And I think, look, it's a community, right? How do we learn from one another? I would say has been another learning that wasn't part of my earlier notes, but the fact that, now that there is a larger community of people that are using the application, and they're using it different ways than Dell is, are there ways in which we can actually learn
of course.
from each other? So that's
this conference is all about that learning. And last question, Sasha, what's in a couple of minutes, what's next for DI at Dell?
Goodness gracious. Well, look, I think this whole, I think we still have a very healthy laundry list of activities that we want to go after and priorities. Certainly, some of the proof of concept that we're doing around optimization that we see as very promising is probably something we'll be able to talk about next year in a lot greater detail. I think just this concept of iterate quickly, get a win, and then figure out how you're going to scale it across the other product categories and the other regions is absolutely.
Without disclosing any secrets, one of the things that's very exciting with what you're doing is really the ability to take that intelligence and apply it in real time in decisions that are really almost reflected back on your website, like literally how you configure the machine. So you're taking that intelligence and deploying it at the low level of granularity in real time. So that's incredibly exciting.
Yeah, it's very exciting.
Sasha, thank you for being back with us this year. And I think it's really important to welcome back people a year later and see what progress you've made. So thank you for sharing that with us.
My pleasure.
Thank you.